Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Matriculate monthly webinars. We are getting very, very close to the end. And I'm really excited to kind of walk through really the last few months with you as you're starting to wrap up your fellowships. This is kind of the moment, right? In March, and in this webinar, we're going to really cover the decision conversation and just what are the next steps for enrollment and where that looks like. So yeah, really excited to keep this rolling and keep going from here, but we'll kind of just get started and talk through the decision. So really what I'm trying to have you walk away with from today is just feeling prepared, right? The enrollment milestone is probably like the biggest moment for us at Matriculate. It's a culmination of all the hard work you've put in alongside everything that we've done in the past year, which has been a year. Again, coming through and understanding like the elements of what makes an effective decision conversation so that you go into your sessions with your students on knowing what to talk about and where you can make the biggest impact, handling some challenges that you might come across and face as you're working with your students, how to best prepare them for that transition to college and how to access campus resources. And then lastly, just what are we expecting you to report for your student enrollment decisions and what your responsibilities are as an advising fellow. But with that, I'm very, very excited to introduce my guest for this month and my colleague and pal, Emma, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Walter. I'm a program associate at Matriculate with the High School Fellow Experience. So I work with HSF Communications. That entails their monthly newsletters and all their content, but also one-on-one communication with them, talking to them about any questions they have or concerns they might have through the HSF experience. I'm who they're coming to. So I'm excited to be here today and kind of talk to you guys a bit about the college transition.
Yep. Thanks, Emma. I'm also super, super excited to have Emma on. Emma's kind of like on the opposite end, working with students, and what you are to me is what Emma is to your HSF. So really excited to have her on for this final moment. So yeah, what are you doing now? And that can range from a lot, right? So a lot of you might be working with multiple students that are in different spots and in different places. And these are some of the things that you can really be focusing in on. Last month in your fellowship meetings and in last month's webinar, we really went through financial aid award letters and how to read through those. This is a great moment to be comparing and contrasting award letters and what is the best financial fit for your students, and using the US Buyer award letter analyzer to understand every breakdown for those conversations. Also, in deciding between schools, exploring campus resources and comparing colleges, determining their top choices. And then if there is a financial gap that is still remaining even outside of a financial aid award package, this is also the time to also apply to outside scholarships for the smaller amounts as well. So whether that's a $500 scholarship or a $1,000 scholarship or a local scholarship, this is a really important time to make sure that your student is doing what they can to fulfill that gap. And then lastly, preparing for the transition to college and what that means. And Emma's going to talk a little bit more about that specifically later on, but all the things that go into transitioning to college, especially from this past year. For the enrollment conversation, what can you really be focusing on now? And the things that you could discuss, right? So obviously, you're going to have a list of schools that your student has been accepted to. And, you know, the ideal situation is your student is being able to pick and choose an option and has options. And so between that, discussing your students' thinking on fit, right? So from all the way at the beginning when they were creating a college list to when they submitted their applications and now that they've gotten decisions, um, things can change, right? And so there is a lot that's happening in our world where students can feel all types of ways and all types of things on what they want to decide to do next. And so really check in with your high school students, right? Check in with your fellows of like if they're having doubts about going far from home. Does their list of schools that they were accepted to still present good options if this is the case? re-explore like the schools they've applied, right? So if they received a rejection from their top choice or from their top two choices, do they have a new first choice from where they're remaining from, right? And so kind of like, even if you're still waiting to hear back from all of your schools, understanding that you still want to keep having these conversations about fit, and to then evaluate your options, right? So these are the things that you're looking for. And then lastly, when we talk about high graduation rate schools, this is a way for us to ensure that we're really just looking for them to match to a fit school. And so that means, do they have a good financial aid package? Are they going to a school that met their academic fit? And are they happy by having that, being accepted to that option? And if your student has one or two options like that, does it also match their fit, right? So at this point in March and during the process, take stock of basically where your student is at with acceptances, rejections, and wait list, so that you can kind of still evaluate and see what almost a contingency plan looks like for your student, while also kind of reestablishing how they feel about the schools that they've been accepted to, and where they're thinking of, or just kind of like how they're feeling about where they're at in the process right now, just because this is a super anxious period and there's a ton that they can be feeling. And you as the AF can really just be an emotional support to kind of like work with them through all of it. Um, Next up, we kind of just have some expectations on your side, right? And again, this is where you have one of the biggest impact moments as your time as a fellow. And this is what we're expecting you to do. So really, it's important that you review each financial aid award letter, right? Last month, we talked about how complicated these can look and how messy they could look, and being able to break through the clutter and have a clear understanding on each award package is really critical. And so you as an AF should be really confident about where your student stands with each school. You're discussing their current thoughts on fit and what they're looking for as they go to a college and if they do commit. And you're supporting further exploration activities to help the HSF learn about more schools, or schools about where they've gone to or gotten accepted to or are waiting to hear back from, including any accepted opportunities they might be eligible to do. And then explaining the benefits of either attending a high graduation rate school, but also kind of the benefits of making sure they are attending a school that has met their fit academically and financially, and all the things that we have talked about ad nauseum as your time as an advising fellow. So really, again, the biggest thing that we are asking you to know and really be confident of is understanding the enrollment decisions of your student, and that when you report that to us, that you're understanding why, right? So the thing that you want to look out for is if your student is making a non-high quality decision. So that could be a student who's committing to a school where it's not a financial fit, and that or it's not an academic fit. That's a situation that you want to bring up to your head advising fellow and campus lead after you've exhausted all your conversations with them. So if a student is already telling you that they're coming to a school that you think is not a quality option or not a quality decision, please make sure to let us know, so that we can also do our best to support you and make sure that the HSF has what they need to make that decision for themselves. But they are doing that with all the information from multiple sources that are there. Cool. And then next up, I'm going to talk about a toolkit that you all have, or a tool that's on your kit that you all have, which is the college decision spreadsheet. So this kind of goes in conjunction with the award letter analyzer, where this is a real nice and easy way to organize acceptances and then understand key tabs on kind of just like a note sheet to reflect and just kind of like almost start the pros and cons sheet. But I think the biggest factors are always going to be net costs and financial aid. And then lastly, the things that the student really liked about the school. And so this could be a good way for you to be able to keep track of your student's decision-making process, but also kind of understand where each student stands from a financial lens too. So if you haven't already been using this, really recommend that you start this now to make sure that you are feeling confident for each of your HSFs that they have this ready and that you're ready to go. What am I doing? So we're still doing a ton in this moment for your fellowships. We're resolving in any unresponsive high school fellow updates. And so if you've submitted an unresponsive student report, you should be hearing from your campus lead on the final outcome of that outreach, and making sure that we have that ready to go for you if your student does become inactive. Um, and then also we are in some cases will reassign high school fellows who have received inadequate support, which means basically an advising fellow is not able to support their student right now, but a high school fellow is still asking for support. Um, so know that we are still kind of making sure that if a high school fellow needs support or if an AF needs support, that we are still putting that together. And if your high school fellow has gone unresponsive, please make sure to fill that out so that we can kind of also do the necessary outreach to make sure to find out A, what happened, and B, most importantly, try to reconnect both of you. And then lastly, we're also identifying high risk students and then working directly with their advising fellows or with you. And that can be a big range of metrics, as high risk students can range from students who can have an unbalanced list. So if we saw from the fall that there could be uncertainty about like not being able to pick and choose between options in this period, or could only have options between bad financial fits, this is something that we might be in touch with you to make sure that you have all the support that you need to walk through your student during this milestone. All right. And then next up, we have some additional elements to what makes this conversation effective. And really, just like as your student is deciding, have they been able to visit the school if it was possible? Have they been able to take a virtual tour? I know Emma's going to talk a little bit more about the virtual transition too, which I'm excited to hear. Have they been able to connect with current students? Do you know any current students at the schools that they're thinking about? If they were able to connect with any local alumni events, if they were available? Um, Also want to talk a little bit about parent engagement. This could feel really awkward or weird for a lot of you. If you are in a spot where a parent wants to sit in on your decision conversations and you might not already have developed that relationship yet, just reach out to staff to kind of like talk through if there's anything that you might need support on or coaching on, in case if you are interacting with any parents that have questions or concerns. I know for a lot of folks who are working with students who might be moving a pretty far distance away from home, their parents might be uncertain or worried, and you might be involved in that conversation. Just please let us know if you're in that spot or if you're ever uncomfortable in that spot, so that we can kind of arm you best with that conversation. And then lastly, you're always considering financial aid. This is always kind of like the biggest indicator of whether or not this is a realistic option for a student. So in addition to the award letter, how's your student considering their investments in the education? So like, are they, analyzing um, the outstanding payments that they have to do after the 4 years of loans, or is this something that they are willing and ready to do, or their family is willing and ready to do? So just take a good stock of kind of just like how your student's family is also prepared to either pay the gap or additionally just like look for outside scholarships.
Yeah, and I just want to stress the point of college exploration and taking advantage of virtual options. A lot of HSFs who are on the fence about enrollment decisions are usually at this point kind of taking stock that because of the current circumstances, they haven't been able to visit their schools and really feel a part or welcome of that community. And so I really would implore you guys to push for your students to take advantage of every virtual opportunity that comes their way in terms of making that college choice and even after during transition.
Yep, definitely. So what's some support that you guys might have as you're kind of like going through this really critical period? So March is a really important time, especially with the meetings that we're holding this. And so if there's anything that's specific, that's like really unique to your high school fellows, that is, we're going to try to like set you guys up around your cohort so that you have a group of peers to talk through these situations together. Would also call out just using your Slack channels, using your GroupMe pages. Your AFs are an incredible resource. I saw some folks at Emory today kind of like talk through additional local scholarships for one of their students. And so, keep doing that. Keep leaning on each other. You guys are your best support. You are some of the smartest people I know. So keep leveraging each other as resources. Your campus leads are also here to talk through any of the nuances as your student makes a commitment. This isn't always cut and dry, right? If there's anything where you're feeling off or you're not feeling super comfortable and you think your student may undermatch or aren't sure how to proceed, like this is where we make an impact too. And so for me personally as a campus lead, these are the situations where I like to jump in and make sure that you have the support to talk through these really heavy conversations. And then lastly, understanding when or when not to tap on a university or when to reach out directly to an admissions or financial aid office. So if your student is considering a financial aid appeal or to talk through an admissions appeal, if there's something that's like leaning to what we've talked about in the past and that you still want to support with or advocate for, again, recommend you reaching directly out to your campus lead for like further clarification, further direction on what to do if your student is thinking about reaching out directly to a campus. Okay, and so some challenges. And this is one of the things that we have seen a lot of. And especially that you can think about from past years, but also this year as well. And the situations that we can see is that usually if the high school fellows final college application list or didn't really reflect a balanced list, so it was maybe too many reaches, not enough match schools, and you're concerned about what options they have, you always actually want to look at some of the honors college options at any public institution. So even if a school isn't an HGR, their honors program might actually provide a little bit more resources. And it's not even just about the fact that it's an HGR. Being able to enroll into an honors college is just a way to get either preferred classes, more resources, and like a better chance to just have more resources to be successful in college. And so just kind of like making sure that you are, as an advising fellow, are like almost advocating for that and that your student is taking advantage of the options that could be available to them. Again, if there's a non-high grad rate, if it's a non-high graduation rate option, really kind of like ensuring that it meets their match and fit, and that it's a school that the student has researched really well and knows a lot about and is very comfortable going there. And sometimes in other cases where if your student is really lacking options or is not having a school to commit to or is really struggling to find any acceptances, there's some high graduation rate schools with rolling admissions, and that is still sent to you as well. And so if you're in that spot, let us know so that we can still kind of like best support you and your students in that way. Okay. And what to do if your student was accepted to a low grad rate school? Okay, so for this situation, your high school fellow is accepted to a low grad rate school, is ready to commit, even without hearing from the rest of their options. How do you make the case for them to wait and consider all options? And so the issue here isn't that your student is committing to a low grad rate school. It's really that they're committing to a school without hearing the rest of their options, right? And so you're comparing and saying like, of the remaining schools available that the student hasn't heard from yet, what is out there that they aren't going to be able to get at their current school, right? And so that could range from a variety of things. So that's going to be academic, between career offerings, or just general things that you were talking about why that student might be on the list. And so usually like that could feel very surface level, but know that there's like other factors that could drive a student's decision. So if a student is telling you they already want to commit to a school without looking at all their options, there might be something else at play. And so you really want to be able to talk through with your student on why they're so heavy to rush into a commitment. And so there's a lot of myths. And so thinking that they might lose their spot or that they feel pressure from any outside force, really dig in and see what the issues are they're facing to make them feel that they have to commit right away. Because obviously you want to understand, like you want to make that decision with perfect information and that you knew where you stood for each school before you make it. And so that a student doesn't feel the regrets of, oh, I actually did get accepted somewhere while I already committed to somewhere else. So, and and also has submitted an enrollment deposit that could be sizable. So really talk through that and make sure that your student is almost waiting to consider all their options, especially if this is before the May 1st deadline. But again, you should know what your student is thinking and what they're feeling and where they're leaning towards going. And these are the conversations that you should be having now. Okay. And then if your student is committing to a non-HGR, even for, again, I'm going to talk about this as well, but like even if your student is committing to an HGR, you should be able to know the context of why they're committing to a school, right? So obviously there's always going to be circumstances in which a non-HGR school is the right or only choice for a student. And that could be a myriad of factors, right? So whether that's family circumstances and needing to stay close to home, and the student might not have a ton of HGR options around them. Affordability, and saying like if a student gets an incredible financial aid package and has like a good fit at that school, that's a more than okay reason for a student to accept that option. Or if a student just wasn't accepted in HGR schools and this was their only option. Those could all feel like, oh, like these are unfortunate things that happened. But again, you want to be able to speak about your student in a way that you knew what happened and you knew what the context was. And even if your student is deciding between multiple HGR schools, you should know why your student is committing to a school. And so as we're coming through with the enrollment milestone, know that context is always important here too. And so always celebrating kind of like that moment and understanding like, hey, they either got a great financial aid package or they are staying close to home and that's what they wanted. And those are the things that you want to be able to speak to as you are filling out like the last session summaries and reporting what commitment your students are making. Okay. And what other data are you reporting? So you're telling us when you're having those decision conversations and when they are committing. It's also very good for us to know like all acceptances, declinations, and wait lists. If your student is accepted to any major scholarship awards, so whether Gates or Jack Cut, that's happening now or very soon, and then the college enrollment decision. So again, all of this should be submitted via session summaries. Your HAFs are reading all of those. If there's something that needs to be, if there's information that you need to share directly, you could always do that with your HAF or campus lead. And if a student is, again, indicating that they're planning to commit to a low graduate schools, just tell us. And if you're afraid of that they're making a low quality option or a low quality decision, and that just means that they are making a decision without like all the information present, let us know so that we can kind of support you and your student in the best way possible from there. Okay, that was a lot for me. I'm going to take one big drink of water and take a breath. But I'm very, very excited to pass it back to Emma so that you can also talk through on navigating college and those conversations.
Yeah, thank you. So just going to be talking to you guys briefly about the HSF experience as they begin to navigate transitioning to college. As they move towards this change, they'll be encountering a lot of spaces and challenges that they're unfamiliar with, and that's something that I've been focusing on with the HSS that I talk with, and I want to take a moment to talk about that stuff with you guys. So go to the next slide. Some of the challenges that are kind of reoccurring, and then some new challenges as well that I've been seeing this semester as students express their concerns for college are exploring a new environment, finding resources and on-campus communities in tandem with that, making a virtual transition versus a more traditional on-campus, and then just general time management and scheduling with the autonomy that comes with college. So starting with the new environment, obviously colleges are different than maybe other institutions that students have been more familiar with in the past. their college could have a different socioeconomic breakdown than where they're from. They'll be navigating a new space, possibly if they have in person as an option, they could be in a completely different state, or even just a new space in their own state. The diversity at their schools might differ from that of their own communities, or students may not have many students who share the same identities as them on campus. And then students oftentimes get onto campus and don't have the understanding that the university is a space that actually works for them, and that the resources and services on campus are all there to enhance their experience. So the next challenge is finding resources. So this is a pretty big concern that HSFs raised with me around this time. So that college campuses are full of resources, as you know, such as student services and on-campus groups to help students transition to their new space. But as students make the move to the college space, they need to know where to look, what resources are accessible to them on campus and off campus as they enter this new space. So just some examples: the student service centers, health clinics if they were to have an emergency, learning centers for tutoring options, student unions, and student organizations. So helping them find spaces where they can feel welcome, are engaged in their communities. And this is all also, translated into the virtual space as well. So even if they're not on campus, where can they find this information? Where can they access the resources virtually that they're entitled to as they enter being a student on their new campus? So obviously a common theme is making the virtual transition. The slide is kind of applicable to all slides, but with the COVID-19 virus, some colleges are still functioning in a virtual space. So whether it's before the college transition, during enrollment and making that decision, or after, embracing the virtual space with your students is a crucial part of this process. So virtual tours, virtual admitted students days, they could be looking at a virtual orientation, or even like virtual roommate meetings for when they do get the chance to get on campus, are kind of crucial to helping them feel like this experience is, still real and important, and like going to be a big life step where you want them to feel secure and safe as they enter their new space when they do. So taking advantage of virtual opportunities is really important.
Yeah, I think um one of the things I've kind of like also seen is just like students kind of also having like group me's too, Emma, and just kind of like being able to connect with them in that way. And I think that kind of like goes back to the last slide too, of just like how important all those resources are to like have like a feeling of just feeling welcome and safe, and just that's already so hard because this past year was like spent living in our bedrooms. And so that all feels like it goes hand in hand with like having that community, even if it's virtual.
Yeah, absolutely. Establishing any spaces where they can be with, other students who are a part of like-minded groups, who are advocates for similar causes as them, who just are into the same hobbies as them, really helps students feel embraced and welcome as they move into that space and less alone.
Hmm.
Another just general challenge that's often expressed to me that I address with students is time management and scheduling. So obviously, as you all know, college will be a whole new landscape for students when it comes to managing their time. So scheduling their classes, general time management, balancing class and possible work if students need to address like gaps in their financial aid packages, or they'll be participating in work studies, internships, or fellowships. What's that going to look like with a full college workload? Um, and then also, just as important, making time for self-care. So in setting up time management and scheduling, where are they making time for themselves as people who need a break, is a really important thing to discuss in terms of college transition. So the big question is, how do we communicate these differences or these challenges to our students? So a couple tips that I talk with my students with is, help students be realistic about their goals for the first semester or even their first year. So acknowledging that they cannot do everything. College is really exciting time. It's easy to want to do everything, but leaving space to take care of themselves prevents burnout and preserves their mental health. Talking about finding their community is really important, but maybe not getting involved in like 6 or 7 different on-campus groups is just a way to kind of redirect making realistic goals for their students, or making sure that they have realistic class loads. Talking to students about how they navigate time management challenges in the past and work on a plan how that will translate when they're exposed to the freedoms that come with the college experience is another point. So obviously, if a student is moving to an on-campus situation where they'll be out of their home, they'll be exposed to a new sort of autonomy that they might not have had in the past, and seeing how that works with scheduling and setting up jobs and also social time as well. Sharing your college experience, and kind of talking about how you transitioned to college and what that looked like. So talking through your path with students obviously helps them feel less alone on their journey, and it's just relatable for them to know that lots of other students kind of go through these challenges or feel insecurities or experience these concerns as they enter college. Um, Showing students what a college schedule actually looks like and talk about the process of scheduling, and also, scheduling what works for them in terms of when classes might be appropriate, if they're not a morning person or if they don't have an option, techniques for, waking up earlier or anything like that. Those are all points that I talk about very often. Another important point, identifying the resources available to you or to the students before they're struggling. Ideally, actually finding them or identifying them before they're really struggling. So this means helping them find health clinics, counseling centers, and student services so they feel that they have safe and comfortable spaces around them. Even before they get on campus, they know where to go if they encounter any sort of issue where they feel like they need to reach out for help. Is a really important space. And this also can be encompassed in terms of finding spaces where they're finding on-campus groups where they can find, groups of their peers, or be a part of group meets where they can build community. These could also be resources available to students on campus. And then just drilling in the point again, that emphasizing that the administration is there to help them, so that they, finding if it's virtually, online venues or in person, like spaces where they can go to reach out to administration for questions or concerns to help them with, things in terms of roommates or class scheduling or finding their advisors. The goal of the university is to help to support and empower students. And so that's a point that I always try to drill in with my students as they approach college transition. So, you as advisors are uniquely well suited to talk to your students about transition to college and the realities of navigating this new environment. So just think about how you can use your own experience and insights to empower your students to proactively utilize resources and get the most out of college. Is just something that, you can think on as you're informing yourself when you're advising your students. And then I also included some transition to college cheat sheets, which are located in the High School Fellow Toolkit to help guide these conversations. So on campus services, preparing to be on campus, connecting with the community, managing finances, and taking time for self-care. And then I would also encourage you to have your HSFs check out their next newsletter, where there'll be lots of like enrollment and transition support options, where students could talk to current students at their prospective schools about questions or concerns they have. We'll also have options for like community group chats at schools as well that will be included in the next newsletter.
And all these resources that Emma called out here are going to be on the AF newsletter for you guys to walk through and see. Cool. Emma, thank you. That was awesome. And really just some next steps for you all as we close out. Just make sure to submit the check for understanding for March. Really, really going to yell at all of you to schedule regular sessions with your high school fellows for March, April, and May. This is a really critical time. I know for a lot of you, you may have not had many sessions in either January or February. That makes a ton of sense, right? But this is really the time to make sure you're having a high impact moment and doing what you need to do to make sure that your students are feeling great. Include all the acceptances, rejections, and waitlists and session summaries so that we all know what we're doing and that we can help best support you in that way. And we will be in touch with higher students. But I think that's it from me. Emma, I think we are good. Thank you so much for joining. Anything else you want to say to this group before we let them go?
No, thank you for having me. And if I'm always available to chat or talk through situations with HSFs if there's any questions or concerns.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Later.